I held my hands around the warm cup on the kitchen table, the quiet in the house thick as the morning fog. The old wall clock, a wedding present from my late mother, kept ticking, each click a little accusing drumbeat. Things that had once felt steady and ordinary now seemed fragile, like glass threaded through with hairline cracks. My husband, Henry, had come home late from yet another business dinner, and the way he moved suggested he carried something heavy inside him. Exhaustion, yes, but also guilt. He collapsed into bed without a shower, his expensive cologne mixing with a sweeter perfume that did not belong to me. I lay there awake and uncomfortable. The sound of his snoring turning, for the first time in many years, into a sound that mocked me. I moved through the house with the quiet, practiced motions of someone who'd kept a home for decades. I tidied the living room, folded his jacket, picked up his wallet, and glanced down at his phone where an email notification blinked like a small warning light. Henry never fussed with that kind of thing. He always said gadgets were a pain. Still, curiosity, that animal part of me, nudged me to open it. The message was short and intimate. "You were amazing tonight, Dad." A heart in red followed the words, and I felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath me. Who called him Dad like that? The email address was nothing but letters and numbers, meaningless, but the tone was unmistakable. I slid his phone back and kept straightening, my hands trembling. I found a restaurant receipt in his pocket from a place in Savannah I hadn't heard him mention, a dinner for two. A bottle of wine we had once shared on our 10th anniversary. Courses that suggested candles and a slower, closer conversation. I remembered that night, the way Henry toasted to my bakery's first year, his proud smile. It felt like a photograph from someone else's life. Outside, the October sky leaned cold and low over the city. Inside, my world tilted. I checked the garage. The SUV was still warm, a faint floral scent clinging to the interior. In the glove compartment, something plastic and sticky gave me the proof I had dreaded. A used tube of personal lubricant, the cap crusted with dried residue. Henry and I had not been close in years. He'd always blamed fatigue. So why was this here? The realization slid like ice across my spine. I took photos of the receipt and the email, my hands steadying only because I had to be methodical. I remember the small, maddening detail, Henry's phone password, the date we first met. Worked when the others didn't. When I scrolled the browser history, there it was, searches about splitting assets, how to keep the house in a divorce, legal tricks. Page after page, recent notes and tabs left open like footprints in the snow. It wasn't just an affair. It looked like a plan. A knot of bile rose in my throat as I realized his sudden attentiveness lately had been part of a script he was following. That evening he came home with roses and a box of chocolates, calling me his one true love. He planted a light kiss on my cheek and told me he'd arranged something special for our anniversary. I listened, watching his face for any slip, any tremor that would tell me more. Later, when the house was quiet, his phone buzzed in the hallway, a voicemail from a woman he called Mom. The words were ordinary, but the tone was conspiratorial. They were arranging everything. I began to put the pieces together. The late night calls, the receipt, the perfume, the sudden obsession with appearances. They were setting a public stage. Why? So I'd have no choice but to sign away my share or be humiliated enough to back down. I called Claire Whitmore by the name I'd come to know too well in my head, the pretty young woman at the center of this. But first, I needed facts. I reached out to an old college friend, Emily Cole, now a family attorney, someone whose steadiness I trusted. "Emily," I said when she greeted me, and then I told the story as carefully as one can tell a catastrophe, the receipts, the searches, the cap on the lubricant tube. She listened, asking the sensible, practical questions that cut through emotion. Whose name is on the deed? When was it purchased? Who paid for what? When she found out that the condo had been a premarital gift to me given by my parents before I married Henry, she made a sound of relief I could feel through the phone. "That property is likely your separate asset," she explained. "If you can produce the original deed and the paperwork, it'll be a big help. For the first time in days, a small ember of calm grew inside me, but there were more shadows. Henry's mother, Celia, always poised and cool as thin ice, dropped by, smiling the way you smile as an actor in a role. "How are you, Margaret?" she asked, stopping in uninvited and sweeping an appraising glance over my living room. Her presence always made the apartment feel smaller. "Your son asked me to help with the anniversary," she said, sliding into the armchair as if she owned it. She began, after polite chatter, to ask about the condo documents. "Where do you keep the papers?" The sort of casual question people use as knives. When she left, I had the same taste of iron in my mouth. Questions that suddenly seemed harmless now had edges that I began to act. I didn't want to alarm Henry into tightening his grip on the conspiracy, so I moved like someone on stage, composed in front of the audience. I checked bank accounts and made sensible transfers into a new personal account. I visited the old real estate lawyer who had done our condo papers years before. He thumbed through an ancient file and said, quietly, "You were the recipient of that gift. The deed named you alone." Henry was added later. He promised a certified copy the next day. I felt a small, private triumph at that discovery. The thing Henry thought would ruin me could, in fact, be my shield. A courier from Germany arrived that afternoon with documents from my late aunt. Unexpected papers from an estate I had forgotten existed. As I read, my breath caught. A condominium in Munich, a bank account, an investment condo in Miami Beach. Assets I'd inherited and never planned to reveal because I meant it to be a surprise for Henry on our anniversary. Suddenly, it was clear my life was complicated by layers I hadn't disclosed, but those very layers gave me choice. I set the papers in a safe and arranged, quietly and deliberately, the steps that would protect what was mine. Henry, for his part, continued to play his part. He had booked a ballroom, a lavish affair he insisted was for the perfect celebration. The cost left a sharp ache in my chest when the manager told me the total, a figure that in that moment felt obscene for what it would be used to do. Celia fluttered about the place, radiant in her satisfaction. Claire, pale and poised in a high-priced coat, laughed with the manager about the decor, imagining the life she would have once the charade closed. The whole thing smelled like a trap. I did what I had to do. I gathered evidence, printed the deed, the estate papers, the screenshots, the receipts. I kept my face placid as I walked into the ballroom that night in a new dress and an older woman's steady dignity. Henry stood, smiling, and the room quieted. He took the microphone and began to talk about the past 25 years, compliments that pivoted into the confession that he was no longer happy, that our marriage had run its course. The words landed like blows. People murmured. Claire watched, eyes glittering. Celia beamed and then I took the microphone from him. "Friends," I said, my voice soft but clear. "Before we let words fly, there are a few truths that ought to be known." I told them, slowly, precisely, about the email, about the receipt, about the searches. I took out the deed and the estate letter and set them where everyone could see. I told them the condo had been my parents' gift pre-marriage, and that I had my aunt's inheritance now, fully documented. The gasp that rose was immediate. Henry's face drained of color. Claire's mask slipped. He stumbled through protests. He was entitled to a fair split, he said. But it was too late. The night's theatrical cruelty fell flat on a floor of facts. Guests began to murmur, outrage and disbelief spilling into the room. Some people recorded, some whispered. The charade collapsed under the weight of what I quietly revealed. I knew. I had prepared. He had miscalculated. Claire's composure shattered. She fled into the corridor. Celia tried to explain, but the words were thin. In the end, it was Henry who looked the most lost, a man who'd counted on appearances and secrecy. Both now stripped away, outside, as I breathed in the cool evening. I watched the mess through the ballroom windows. The scene inside, Henry pale, saying he'd been misunderstood, looked absurd. He had tried to use money and spectacle to make me small. Instead, he had revealed his own emptiness. I felt something unexpected then. Not triumph, not cruelty, but a steadier thing, a calm that comes when one has acted with integrity and clarity. I had defended what was mine. I had refused to let shame be wielded as a weapon against me. A few months later, in a courtroom that smelled of paper and finality, the judge read what everyone had suspected. The condo was mine alone. Debts that Henry had kept secret were laid bare. He would be accountable. The marriage ended. He begged for forgiveness at the courthouse steps. I replied simply that it was better we part ways. I walked away with choices, a new car bought with part of the inheritance, papers that freed me from the manipulations I had endured. The weeks that followed were small and steady. I moved to a bright condo near Lake Mirren, began new projects, a small publishing venture for translated works, a lifeline with books and light. I reconnected with friends. My trust in myself returned slowly but surely. When the video of that night went viral, Henry lost his job. Claire moved on to another man who compensated for exactly the emptiness she craved. But those were not things I cheered. My victory was quieter. The simple continuation of mornings at the bakery, the shared jokes with my son Peter. The rediscovery of a self that did not need someone else's approval. Sometimes, late at night, I think of the person I was when Henry and I first fell in love, hopeful. Certain in the small way you can be when young. I think now of what I learned, that dignity does not always sound loud. Sometimes it is the steady, patient work of holding on to what is true. I am not bitter. I am not vengeful. I am Margaret Hale, and I have chosen a life of my design. Each morning I wake, I feel the sun on my hands in the garden, and I know I am free. When morning sunlight slipped through the blinds. Painting the kitchen in faint stripes of gold, Evelyn sat at her table, hands curled around a cup of untouched coffee. Steam coiled upward, whispering into the quiet air, but she didn't move. She'd barely slept. Her mind kept looping back to that moment, the doctor's hand, the folded paper, the strange warning. Act normal, but don't go back. Those words had burrowed deep into her. She could still see the look in his eyes. That flicker of pity, of fear, something human and heavy. It had been 3 days since the surgery. Her incision throbbed softly beneath her nightgown, a dull ache that matched the one in her chest. The world outside carried on, neighbors mowing their lawns, kids chasing the ice cream truck. But Evelyn's house felt suspended in time. Like the air was holding its breath, her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Caleb, her husband. On my way home soon. Don't make dinner. I'll bring something. Ordinary words, simple. But now, every syllable felt like a hidden clue. She didn't reply. Instead, she looked toward the living room, the spot where Caleb's leather jacket hung over the chair, where his muddy boots rested near the door. Every detail of his presence suddenly felt foreign. Her eyes drifted to the window. Across the street, Mrs. Danner was clipping roses in her front yard. Evelyn forced a small smile when their eyes met, but she quickly pulled the curtain close. Something was wrong. Deeply, frighteningly wrong. That evening, when Caleb walked through the door, carrying takeout from Harper's Grill, she caught his reflection in the windowpane before she turned. There was nothing outwardly different. Same easy grin, same scent of aftershave and engine oil. But Evelyn could sense it. A tightness in his smile, a weight behind his eyes. He placed the bag on the counter. Got your favorite, salmon and mashed potatoes, he said cheerfully. Her throat felt dry. Thanks, hun. He moved closer, kissed her forehead lightly. How you feeling? Doctors say you can start walking around more. She hesitated. He did, he said. I just need to take it easy for a bit. Caleb smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. That's good. You'll be back to normal in no time. Normal. That word echoed like an empty hallway. They ate in silence, the clinking of forks filling the quiet. Evelyn could feel her pulse quicken. She wanted to ask, to say, what's going on? What aren't you telling me? But she couldn't, not yet. After dinner, he turned on the news and stretched out on the couch. Evelyn excused herself to the bedroom, closing the door quietly. Her heart pounded. She reached for her purse and pulled out the folded paper she'd hidden inside the lining. The doctor's note. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it again under the dim bedside lamp. "You're not safe. Don't go home." "They're watching." The words glared back at her like fire in the dark. She bit her lip, tears pricking her eyes. "They're watching." Who was they? Her mind spiraled through memories, the odd phone calls with no one speaking on the other end. The strange car that had idled outside last week, the time Caleb came home late, smelling of someone else's perfume and told her it was nothing. Evelyn clutched the note against her chest. The walls seemed to close in. The next morning, she drove to the flower shop she owned on Maple Hollow Road, a small, bright place that smelled like peonies and rainwater. Flowers had always been her peace, her escape. Her assistant, Tina, a bubbly college girl with freckles and quick hands, greeted her with a smile. "Hey, Miss Evelyn. You look pale. You okay?" "I'm fine," Evelyn said softly. "Just still recovering." Tina nodded, wrapping a bouquet of yellow daisies. "Well, if you need me to cover more shifts, I can." "Thank you, sweetheart." "I'll be fine." Evelyn walked into the back office, her safe little corner filled with receipts, ribbons, and memories. On the desk was an envelope addressed to her, no stamp, no return name. Just her first name written in block letters, Evelyn. Her pulse raced. She hadn't seen it there yesterday. She looked around. The back door was locked, windows secure. Slowly, she tore open the envelope. Inside was a single photo, her living room, taken through the window, and there she was in it, sitting on the couch, reading. The picture sent a cold wave through her body. Her hands shook so hard she dropped it. The world around her seemed to tilt. Someone had been inside her yard, watching her. And then she noticed, in the corner of the photo, barely visible, a reflection. A man's shadow. That night, she waited until Caleb fell asleep before sneaking into the study. He always kept his briefcase locked, but Evelyn remembered the spare key taped under the desk drawer. Her heart thudded in her ears as she turned the key and opened the latches. Inside, neat stacks of papers. Business contracts. Nothing unusual until she found a small red folder labeled E1 to project. Inside, blueprints, receipts, and a printed email thread. The subject line, Target, E. Marsh, confirmed. Her name. Evelyn flipped through each page in disbelief. The emails were between Caleb and someone named Dr. Howard Mercer, a man she didn't know. They discussed progress, timeline, and something chilling. The sample has been secured during surgery. Her stomach twisted. Sample. She found a medical code scribbled in the margin. XTR for a 1 serum extraction. Tears blurred her vision. Her surgery. It wasn't just a procedure. It was part of something else. Suddenly, a sound of footsteps in the hallway. Evelyn froze. "Eve." Caleb's voice was muffled, groggy. "What are you doing up?" She quickly shoved the papers back, locked the case, and stood, trying to steady her breathing. "Just getting water," she said softly. He leaned against the doorway, watching her. In the dim light, his expression was unreadable. "You okay?" She forced a weak smile. "Yeah, go back to bed." He hesitated a second longer before nodding and walking away. When he was gone, Evelyn pressed her hands to her chest, feeling her heartbeat throb against her palms. The truth was closing in, one terrible inch at a time. The next day, she called the doctor's office. "I need to speak with Dr. Wyatt. It's urgent," she said. The receptionist paused. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but Dr. Wyatt isn't available. He's on indefinite leave." "Leave?" Evelyn repeated. "What kind of leave?" The voice on the other end stammered. "I'm not sure, ma'am. He resigned suddenly after some kind of incident." Her blood ran cold. "Can you tell me where he went?" "I'm sorry, we don't have that information." Click. The line went dead. Evelyn sat frozen, the hum of the shop refrigerator buzzing faintly behind her. Whatever Dr. Wyatt had discovered, whatever made him warn her, had now cost him his job. Maybe more. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching headlights move across the dark road. Her phone buzzed at 2:37 a.m. An unknown number. A message appeared. You should have left when you could. Her breath caught. She typed back with trembling fingers. Who is this? No reply. She checked the locks on every door twice. The shadows outside seemed alive. At 3:15. There was a faint scratching sound from the backyard. She grabbed the flashlight and crept to the window. Nothing at first, just the whisper of wind through the trees. Then she saw it, footprints leading from the fence to her back porch. And on the porch, taped to the door, another envelope. She stepped outside, heart racing, and tore it open. Inside was another photo. This time, it wasn't her in the picture. It was Caleb, standing outside the hospital, shaking hands with Dr. Mercer. Evelyn stared at that photo for what felt like hours. The flashlight beam trembled in her hand, her breath fogging the cold glass of the door. Caleb and Dr. Mercer, smiling, shaking hands. Like old friends closing a deal. Her husband. The man who held her hand through her surgery. The man who kissed her forehead and told her she'd be okay. The world around her dimmed to a low, ringing silence. She stumbled back inside, clutching the photo like it might burn her. She didn't cry this time. The tears had run dry. Instead, she sat at the kitchen table, same place as before, and let the rage simmer just beneath her ribs. At sunrise, the light that once looked soft and kind felt cruel. She made herself a cup of coffee, but didn't drink it. Her reflection in the window looked like a stranger. How long had he been lying to her? How long had he been part of this? By 8 a.m., Evelyn had a plan. Not a full one. Just a whisper of one. She called Tina. Sweetheart, could you handle the shop for me today? I've got an errand. Tina, ever sweet and cheerful, agreed immediately. Of course. You okay, Miss Evelyn? I'm fine, dear, she lied. Just need some time to sort things. Evelyn hung up, grabbed her purse, and stepped out into the chill of early morning. The air smelled of dew and exhaust. She got in her old blue sedan and drove, no destination in mind, just motion. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel as she thought of that folder he won to project. That strange phrase kept looping in her head. E12, serum extraction. Target, E-Marsh. She needed answers. She drove to Riverbend Hospital, the same place where she'd had her surgery. The glass front gleamed in the sun, the automatic doors whispering open like the mouth of something waiting to swallow her whole. Inside, she approached the front desk. Excuse me, she said to the young nurse. I'm looking for records from my procedure last week. I need to speak with someone from Dr. Wyatt's team. The nurse typed something on her computer, then frowned. Ma'am, it says here your records are restricted. Evelyn blinked. Restricted? Yes, ma'am. I can't access them without authorization. Whose authorization? The nurse hesitated, glancing around. Dr. Mercer. Evelyn's pulse spiked. Dr. Mercer? He's not my doctor. I'm sorry, ma'am. That's what it says. Her stomach turned to ice. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Is Dr. Mercer here? The nurse nodded nervously. He's on the 3rd floor. Research wing, thank you. Evelyn turned away before the nurse could stop her. She took the elevator up, each ding echoing like a heartbeat. The 3rd floor was quiet, sterile hallways, frosted glass doors, the hum of fluorescent lights. A brass plaque read Dr. H. Mercer. Biomedical division. She pushed the door open. Dr. Mercer looked up from behind his desk, startled. He was younger than she expected, sharp features, pale eyes, a smile that didn't reach them. Mrs. Marsh, he said smoothly. I was wondering when you might come by. Evelyn froze. You know who I am. Of course. Please sit. I don't want to sit, she said. I want to know why my records are restricted. Why my husband met you. Why my doctor left a note telling me to run. Dr. Mercer's expression didn't change. He folded his hands, considering her. You've been through a lot. You should rest. Don't patronize me, she snapped. Tell me what you did. He sighed softly, as if disappointed. You were part of a study, Mrs. Marsh, a very important one. Your husband signed the release himself. Her throat tightened. Release for what? For a treatment trial. A regenerative serum. Cutting-edge work. We needed certain biological samples. You fit the criteria perfectly. Her stomach turned. You took something from me? Not took, he said gently. Borrowed. For the greater good. She shook her head in disbelief. The greater good. You used me. You lied to me. Dr. Mercer leaned back in his chair. Your husband knew. He agreed. And he's been well compensated for his cooperation. The room spun. He sold me. I wouldn't phrase it like that, Mercer said. But yes, he helped us ensure the process went smoothly. For a moment, Evelyn couldn't breathe. Her chest felt tight, her hands numb. You're lying, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Am I? Her knees gave out. She steadied herself against the desk, her mind racing. If this was true, if Caleb had done this, then everything, every kiss, every word of comfort, was poison. She straightened, fury flashing through her tears. You'll regret ever touching me, she said. Mercer tilted his head, amused. Be careful, Mrs. March. You don't want to make enemies in the wrong places. She turned and stormed out before her courage could falter. The hallway felt endless. She could feel Mercer's eyes following her all the way to the elevator. That night, the house was quiet again, too quiet. Caleb was still at work, or so he'd said. Evelyn didn't know if she believed anything anymore. She poured herself a glass of wine but couldn't bring it to her lips. Instead, she sat by the window, watching the wind ripple through the maple trees. Her mind raced with fragments, Mercer's words, the doctor's note, that shadow in the photo. Every piece formed a pattern she didn't want to see. When Caleb finally came home, she was waiting. He looked surprised. You're up late. Yeah, she said softly. I had some things on my mind. He hung his coat on the rack, loosened his tie. You okay? Evelyn nodded, forcing a calm she didn't feel. I went to the hospital today. He froze. Just a flicker, but she caught it. Oh, he said, feigning casual. For what? To see Dr. Mercer. He turned, his face going pale. Why would you do that? Because I wanted the truth, she said. Her voice trembled, but she stood tall. He told me about the trial. About the samples. About you. Caleb's jaw tightened. You shouldn't have gone there. Why, Caleb? So I wouldn't find out what you did. He ran a hand through his hair. You don't understand. It wasn't like that. Then explain it to me. He paced the room. You were sick, Evelyn. You needed that surgery. Mercer said there was a chance to help other people, and yes, there was money. Good money. We could finally pay off the shop, the house. She stared at him, disbelief hardening into anger. You sold part of me for a paycheck. He slammed his fist on the counter. I did what I had to do. The silence that followed was thick and deadly. Evelyn's hands shook, but her eyes were steady. You betrayed me, she said quietly. Caleb looked at her, chest heaving. You'll thank me one day. She didn't answer. Later that night, as he slept, Evelyn packed a small suitcase. Just the essentials, clothes, her mother's locket, and the doctor's note. She stood by the door for a long time, staring at him. Then she whispered, You'll never touch me again, and slipped out into the darkness. For 2 days, she stayed in a cheap motel outside town. The wallpaper peeled, the heater groaned, but it was safe. Or so she thought. On the third night, someone knocked. She froze. Room service. A voice called softly. I didn't order anything, she replied. Silence, then the sound of a keycard sliding into the lock. Her pulse exploded. She grabbed the nearest thing, a lamp, and braced herself. The door opened slowly. It wasn't hotel staff. It was Tina, Miss Evelyn. It's me, she whispered, stepping inside. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Evelyn lowered the lamp, her heart racing. Tina, what are you doing here? Tina closed the door behind her. You left your phone at the shop. I went by your house, but she hesitated. There were men there. 2 of them. They were asking about you. Evelyn's blood ran cold. What kind of men? I don't know. Suits. One had a car with hospital plates. Evelyn sank onto the bed. They're looking for me. Tina's eyes widened. Why? What's going on? Evelyn hesitated. Then she told her everything, the surgery, the note, the photos, the confrontation with Mercer. By the time she finished, Tina was pale. Miss Evelyn, she whispered, we have to go to the police. Evelyn shook her head. No, Mercer has connections. If I go to the police, it'll disappear. They'll make me disappear. So what do we do? Evelyn looked out the window, the neon sign from the motel flickering against her reflection. We find proof, she said. We expose them. Tina stared at Evelyn as if she were watching a ghost learn to breathe again. The air inside that tiny motel room felt heavy, claustrophobic, like the walls themselves were eavesdropping. Evelyn set the empty coffee cup aside and spoke in a whisper. Mercer said there was a file, something called E1 to project. That's the proof. If we can get it, they can't silence me anymore. Tina hesitated. And where's that file? At the hospital, Evelyn said. In his office. Or maybe in the lab. Tina swallowed hard. You're not thinking of I am. Evelyn cut in. I'm going back there tonight, Miss Evelyn. That's insane. They already sent people to your house. What if they catch you? Evelyn looked at her with a calm that didn't match her trembling hands. Then at least I'll know I tried. There was a long pause. Then Tina exhaled shakily. You're not going alone. Evelyn blinked. Tina, no, Tina said, her voice trembling but firm. If you're going, I'm going too. You took care of me like a mother when my own was gone. You're not facing this alone. Evelyn smiled faintly. You shouldn't have to risk this for me. Neither should you, Tina replied. But here we are. They waited until after midnight. The motel parking lot was mostly empty, the flickering neon vacancy sign buzzing faintly in the rain. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat of her old sedan while Tina drove, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Are you sure you remember the layout? Tina asked. Every corner, Evelyn said. They took me through the south wing for my recovery. The lab's one floor below that, the wipers thudded back and forth as they approached the glowing silhouette of Riverbend Hospital. It loomed in the distance like a giant machine. Humming with quiet menace, Evelyn's heart pounded as they parked in the far lot. We'll use the staff entrance, she whispered. There's a keypad, but the security guard used the code 0329 the night I was discharged. Tina gave a nervous laugh. You remember that. When you spend your recovery counting ceiling tiles, you remember everything. They slipped inside. The hallway lights were dimmed for night hours. The faint smell of antiseptic filled the air. Their shoes squeaked softly against the linoleum floor. A distant intercom crackled. A nurse calling for someone on another wing, and both women froze. Holding their breath until silence returned, Evelyn led the way toward the elevator. Pressing the button for the third floor, Dr. Mercer's office, Tina murmured. Yes, Evelyn said. Her voice cold. When the doors opened, the hallway was dark except for a single emergency light flickering near the end. They moved quickly. Evelyn's pulse raced as she reached the frosted glass door marked Dr. H. Mercer. Lock. Tina pulled a bobby pin from her hair. My brother taught me something about locks, she said quietly, kneeling down. Evelyn stared. Tina, but within seconds, there was a faint click. The door creaked open. Tina grinned faintly. You'd be surprised what a girl learns working at a bakery next to a pawn shop. They stepped inside. The room was neat to neat. A large desk faced a window overlooking the parking lot. Shelves lined the walls, filled with binders, labeled vials, and medical textbooks. A faint hum came from a small server cabinet in the corner. Evelyn went straight to the desk, rifling through drawers. Invoices, appointment logs, prescription sheets. But nothing marked D-12. Tina turned to the shelves. What about here? Evelyn joined her, scanning the spines of folders, gene response trials, cognitive restoration tests, serum phase development. Then she sighed a slim black binder labeled E12, subject Marsh. Evelyn, her fingers trembled as she pulled it out. The first page made her stomach twist. Tina covered her mouth. They used you like a lab rat. Evelyn turned the page, photos of her hospital stay, vitals charts, chemical annotations she couldn't decipher. But one note stood out, scrawled in Mercer's handwriting. Phase to pending extraction authorization. Caleb Marsh to be briefed. Her hands shook. She flipped to the last page, a consent form. Her name was there. Her signature. But she didn't remember signing it. This is it, she whispered. This is what I needed. Just then, the lights flickered. Tina froze. Did you? A low sound echoed down the hallway, footsteps. Evelyn's heart slammed in her chest. She grabbed the binder. We have to go. They darted to the door, but the elevator was too far. Evelyn motioned toward the stairwell. Halfway down the dim staircase, they heard voices above them. Security sweeps done. Mercer said the file was compromised. Check the West Wing. Evelyn pressed against the wall, clutching Tina's hand. The footsteps drew closer, boots thudding on the metal steps. When they reached the second-floor landing, Evelyn pushed open the door and pulled Tina into the shadows of a supply room. They waited. Barely breathing, the guards passed, flashlights slicing through the dark, and moved on. Evelyn let out a silent breath. We need to copy this file before they destroy it, she whispered. Tina pointed toward the nurse's station. There's a fax scanner. I can send it to your email. They slipped down the corridor, keeping low. The hospital was a maze of cold light and humming machines. At the station, Tina hurriedly fed the pages into the scanner, typing Evelyn's email address. Come on, she muttered as the machine beeped. A green light flashed. Transfer complete. But then, a shout behind them. Hey, stop right there. Tina gasped. Two security men rounded the corner, one already speaking into his radio. Evelyn grabbed Tina's hand and ran. They sprinted down the hall, shoes slapping the floor, alarms beginning to wail. Stairs. Evelyn shouted. They burst through the emergency exit door and tore down the narrow stairwell. Tina stumbled, clutching the railing. They're right behind us. Evelyn shoved open the door at the ground floor, bolting into the loading bay. Rain hammered down, thunder rumbling overhead. A security truck screeched around the corner. Headlights blinded them. This way. Tina yelled, pulling Evelyn toward the dumpster lane. They ducked behind a stack of crates just as the guards jumped out, scanning the lot. Spread out. Mercer wants that file now. Evelyn's heart pounded so hard it hurt. She clutched the binder to her chest. We have to get off the property. There's a fence at the back, Tina whispered. If we crawl under it, the spotlight swept across the crates. Go, Evelyn hissed. They ran again, slipping through puddles, the binder pressed to Evelyn's chest. The fence loomed ahead, wet and rusted. Tina dropped to her knees, pulling up the loose chain at the bottom. Quick, she whispered. Evelyn slid under, her clothes tearing against the metal. Tina followed, just as a guard's shout echoed behind them. Stop. Hey, they didn't stop. They ran through the trees behind the hospital until their lungs burned. Finally, when they reached the edge of a narrow road, Evelyn collapsed, gasping for air. Rain drenched her hair, her face streaked with mud. Tina crouched beside her. We did it, she breathed. We got out. Evelyn looked down at the binder, soaked but safe in her arms. We got the truth, she said. By morning, they were holed up in Tina's cousin's old cabin, miles outside of town. The place was dusty, full of cobwebs and forgotten furniture. But it was hidden. Evelyn spread the damp papers across the kitchen table, trying to dry them by the weak light filtering through the window. Are you sure it's sent before they cut the power? Tina asked. Evelyn nodded. The green light flashed. It's in my inbox. Tina looked out the window nervously. Then we go to the news, right? Or the FBI? Not yet, Evelyn said quietly. If Mercer knows we took this, he'll spin it before it gets out. We need context. Proof beyond the file. How do we get that? Evelyn stared at one of the last pages, a list of subjects, names, dates, several marked terminated. Her eyes widened. These people, they were all from Riverbend's geriatric wing. They weren't patients. They were test subjects. Tina's face went pale. That's murder. Evelyn nodded. And Mercer made Caleb help. A faint buzz interrupted her thoughts, her phone freshly charged. A new message blinked across the screen. Unknown number. You shouldn't have taken what isn't yours. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Tina read the text over her shoulder. How did they find your number? They always find a way, Evelyn murmured. Then, another message. If you want your husband to live, return the file. Tina's eyes widened. They have Caleb. Evelyn's hands trembled. For all her anger, for all his betrayal, the thought of him in Mercer's hands made her blood run cold. She typed back before she could think. Where is he? The reply came instantly. Riverbend, sublevel 3, midnight. Tina grabbed her wrist. You can't go back there. Evelyn looked at her, eyes blazing with something fierce and desperate. If I don't, they'll kill him. He let them do this to you. I know, Evelyn whispered. But I won't let them make me a monster too. That night, Evelyn stood once again before the looming glass of Riverbend Hospital. Only this time, she wasn't running. Tina begged her to reconsider. They'll trap you, she said, tears in her eyes. Then I'll make sure they go down with me, Evelyn said. If I don't come back. You know what to do. Send the file to every outlet on that list. Tina nodded shakily. I'll be waiting. Evelyn hugged her, the rain beginning to fall again in soft silver streaks. You're brave, Tina. Don't ever forget that. Then she turned and walked toward the glowing doors, each step heavier than the last. Inside, the corridors were silent. She followed the elevators hum down, past the recovery floors, past the lab levels, until she reached the bottom, sublevel 3. The doors opened to a dim, concrete corridor lined with metal doors. A faint humming filled the air, like machinery, or maybe breathing. She moved cautiously, clutching the flashlight she'd stolen from a janitor's closet. Her footsteps echoed. Then she saw him. Caleb. He sat in a chair inside a glass-walled room, wrists bound, for lines running from his arms. He looked thinner, pale, his eyes hollow. Caleb, she cried, running to the door. He lifted his head weakly. Evelyn, before she could reach the control panel, a voice behind her froze her in place. I told you not to take what wasn't yours. Dr. Mercer stepped from the shadows, flanked by 2 guards. His coat was immaculate, his expression calm, as if this were all just another experiment. Evelyn turned slowly. Let him go. Mercer smiled faintly. You've been busy, Mrs. Marsh, breaking into government property, stealing classified data. That's quite a resume for a shopkeeper. Cut the act, she hissed. You're experimenting on people. I'm saving them, Mercer corrected. The serum rebuilds neural pathways. It restores memory, clarity, vitality. These volunteers were terminal until I gave them purpose. You killed them. They were dying anyway. I gave them meaning. Evelyn's voice trembled with fury. You used me. You lied to my husband. You turned my life into a lab test. Mercer stepped closer, his voice low. You misunderstand your importance. You were the mistake, Evelyn. You were the breakthrough. Her breath caught. He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a vial, faintly glowing blue. You adapted better than any subject. Your system stabilized the serum. You survived what no one else could. He glanced toward Caleb. Your husband only wanted to help you. He didn't realize what you were capable of. Evelyn stared, horror dawning. You poisoned me. I evolved you. For a heartbeat, everything went still, the hum, the lights, even the air. Then chaos. Evelyn lunged, grabbing a metal tray and swinging it at the nearest guard. The tray crashed against his shoulder, sending him sprawling. She dove for the control panel, slamming buttons until Caleb's restraints released. Run! She screamed. Mercer shouted something, but the alarms blared, drowning his words. Evelyn yanked Caleb's arm, pulling him to his feet. He stumbled, weak but moving. They tore through the corridor, lights flashing red, voices echoing behind them. At the elevator, the doors closed just in time, the guards pounding against the metal as they ascended. Caleb collapsed to the floor, coughing. Evie, I'm sorry, he gasped. I didn't know what he was doing. I thought. Don't, she said, shaking her head. Save your breath. When the elevator doors opened to the ground floor, they ran out the back exit. Into the rain-soaked night, sirens wailed in the distance. They made it to the car, drenched, gasping. Evelyn threw the binder into the back seat and gunned the engine as they sped down the highway. Caleb turned to her, voice breaking. "Evie, what happens now?" Evelyn's eyes stayed fixed on the road. "Now," she said softly, "we tell the world what they did." Rain pounded the windshield like 1,000 tiny hammers. Evelyn's grip on the steering wheel was iron-tight as she drove through the winding country road. The headlights cut narrow tunnels through the fog, her mind replaying Mercer's words like a curse she couldn't shake. "You weren't a mistake, Evelyn. You were the breakthrough." She wanted to scream, to tear that memory from her skull, but Caleb's labored breathing beside her kept her grounded. He sat slumped in the passenger seat, pale, trembling. The 4 marks on his arms looked like bruises from another world. Evelyn shot him a quick glance. "Stay with me, Caleb. We're almost there." He nodded weakly, his eyes clouded with guilt. "Evie, I never wanted this." "Mercer said it was a treatment, a trial that could fix your memory. I thought," she interrupted sharply. "You thought what?" "That injecting your wife with an experimental serum without her consent was love." His lips trembled. "I was desperate. You don't remember the pain, the confusion. You used to stare at walls for hours, whispering names that didn't exist." He said he could give you back your mind. Evelyn blinked hard, rain mixing with tears on her cheeks. "You should have let me forget rather than turn me into a monster." Silence fell. Only the rain spoke for miles. Finally, Caleb whispered, "I didn't realize he was using you." Evelyn's hands trembled on the wheel. "You didn't want to realize it." The car's tires hissed as they turned down a narrow gravel path leading to the cabin where Tina was waiting. When they pulled up, the lights inside flickered, a single lamp in the window. Evelyn exhaled in relief. Tina burst through the door before they could knock, eyes wide. "Oh my God, Evelyn, you made it." She froze when she saw Caleb, soaked, shaking. "You brought him." Evelyn nodded. "We had no choice. They were going to kill him." Tina's face hardened. "Maybe he deserves." "Not now," Evelyn snapped. "Lock the door." Inside, the room smelled of wet wood and old paper. Evelyn tossed the binder onto the table. Pages stuck together, ink running from the rain, but the crucial data was still visible. Tina grabbed a towel and wrapped it around Caleb's shoulders. "He needs a doctor. No hospitals," Evelyn said. "Mercer has eyes everywhere." Tina frowned. "Then what's the plan?" "We've got evidence, a half-dead husband, and a psychopathic scientist looking for us." Evelyn took a deep breath. "We go public tonight." Tina's laptop hummed on the table. Evelyn sat in front of it, scanning through the file she'd emailed earlier from the hospital fax. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. "It's all here: trial logs, test results, patient deaths." "He can't bury this anymore." Tina leaned closer. "Once we upload it, there's no going back." "I know." Caleb stirred weakly from the couch. "Evelyn, Mercer won't stop. He has people in law enforcement, in the government. You send this out, he'll come after you harder." She turned to him slowly. "Let him." Tina looked uneasy. "Where are we sending it?" Evelyn opened a new tab. "Everywhere: news outlets, whistleblower sites, the Medical Ethics Bureau, and one more." She paused, typing slowly, deliberately. "A journalist I once knew. Someone who still believes in truth." Tina watched as Evelyn attached the file and began writing a short message. "You don't know me, but I was one of them. What you'll read is real. They're killing people under the name of science. Make them see." Her finger hovered over the send button. She closed her eyes and whispered, "For everyone Mercer buried." Double quotes, click. The email flew into the void. For the first time in months, Evelyn felt her chest lighten. "It's done," she murmured. "The world will know." They stayed awake through the night. Every creak outside made Tina jump. Every car that passed on the road sent Evelyn's heart pounding. Just before dawn, Evelyn stood by the window, watching fog drift through the trees. Caleb sat up on the couch, still weak. I keep thinking about the first night you forgot my name, he said quietly. You looked at me like I was a stranger. Evelyn turned, her eyes tired but soft. You were one. He winced but nodded. Maybe I still am. You can't undo what you helped them do, she said. But you can help stop them now. You were in those meetings. You know where the other files are, don't you? Caleb hesitated, then nodded. There's a storage unit. Off Route 19. Mercer kept physical copies, project notes, prototypes. Evelyn grabbed her jacket. Then we're getting them. Tina stepped forward. Evelyn, you just sent the files out. Isn't that enough? It's never enough when people like him can still twist the story, Evelyn said. We need undeniable proof. Caleb stood shakily. I'll take you. She looked at him, torn between hatred and something faintly resembling pity. You'd better mean that. By afternoon, they reached the old industrial district. The storage unit sat behind a chain-link fence, surrounded by half-collapsed warehouses. The sign on the gate read Rivertown Logistics, but most of the letters were gone. Caleb entered a code on the keypad 1125. The gate creaked open. Evelyn scanned the lot nervously. How many people know about this? Just Mercer, Caleb said. And now you. Inside, the unit was filled with file boxes, lab equipment, and dusty computers. A faint hum came from an unplugged freezer in the corner. Evelyn pried open a crate labeled Serum Test Logs Phase 2. She pulled out folders, flipping through pages. Look at this, she said, handing one to Caleb. These aren't just patient records. They're financial ledgers. He was selling the formula to private buyers. Caleb's eyes widened. That's why he needed results so fast. Evelyn felt a chill. He wasn't healing people. He was manufacturing a product. Then she froze. At the bottom of the stack was a photo, her unconscious in a hospital bed, wires taped to her scalp. A note beneath it read, Subject remains stable. Next phase, cognitive obedience trial. Her hands shook violently. He wanted to control people. Before Caleb could speak, a sound echoed from outside, a car door slamming. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Someone's here, Tina whispered. They ducked behind a shelf as footsteps crunched on gravel. A man's voice called out, You should have stayed hidden. Evelyn, Mercer. Evelyn's heart dropped. Caleb whispered, How did he track her? Evelyn breathed. It's in the car. Mercer's silhouette appeared in the doorway, gun in hand, rain dripping from his coat. You had to make this difficult, didn't you? Evelyn stood slowly, stepping into the open. You don't scare me anymore. He smiled coldly. You should be terrified. Do you know what happens to whistleblowers who cross the wrong people? Caleb moved to shield her. Don't do this, Mercer. Caleb moved to shield her. Don't do this, Mercer. Mercer's eyes flicked toward him, full of disdain. You're nothing but a coward who couldn't even control his wife. Caleb clenched his fists. You lied to me. I gave you hope. Mercer sneered. You begged me to fix her. I did, by killing dozens of others. Evelyn shouted. Mercer raised the gun. I saved dozens more. The world will thank me long after you're gone. The tension snapped like a wire. Evelyn lunged for a metal rod on the floor, swinging it at the gun. It went off, the blast echoing through the unit. Shattering glass, Tina screamed. Caleb tackled Mercer, the gun clattering away. The two men struggled violently, blows landing hard. Mercer slammed Caleb against the wall, knocking him breathless. Evelyn grabbed the gun. Her hands shook. Evelyn, no. Caleb gasped. Mercer turned toward her, smirking. You won't do it. You're still the good nurse, still the victim. She steadied her aim. Not anymore. The shot rang out. Mercer fell. The echo lingered, mixing with the rain. Evelyn stood frozen, staring at the body. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, the weapon clattering to the floor. Tina rushed to her. Evelyn, we have to go. Evelyn didn't move. It's over. No, Tina said urgently. It's starting. Once they find him here, they'll come for us next. Evelyn blinked, pulling herself from the fog. Grab the files. All of them. Hours later, they drove into the city, silent and pale. Evelyn's mind replayed the gunshot again and again. Every second a bruise she couldn't wash off. By the time they reached a small press building downtown, night had fallen again. Reporters and investigators were already buzzing inside. The email she'd sent had spread like wildfire. A man approached as they entered. Evelyn Marsh. She nodded cautiously. I'm Daniel Price, investigative journalist. You sent us the Riverbend files. We verified them. It's explosive. Evelyn swallowed. Then tell it all. Every word. Daniel nodded, gesturing toward a small conference room. Come inside. We'll record everything. Inside, microphones and cameras waited. Evelyn sat at the table, hands folded tightly. Tina stood beside her for support. Daniel pressed record. Mrs. Marsh, can you tell us what happened at Riverbend Hospital? Evelyn inhaled deeply. They called it the E1 project, the cure for memory loss. But it wasn't a cure. It was a weapon, a way to manipulate the human mind. They tested it on the elderly, people like me, without consent. And when they failed, they erased the evidence. Her voice cracked slightly. They used me. They made my husband believe it was treatment. But I survived. And I remember Daniel leaned forward. Do you have proof? Evelyn opened the binder, spreading the papers across the table. Signatures, medical charts, payment receipts, and a flash drive, proof enough to bury every last one of them. She said. Within 48 hours, the story exploded. Headlines blared across networks. The world watched in shock. The hospital's board was raided. Government inquiries began. Arrests followed. But for Evelyn, victory felt hollow. She sat on the porch of the cabin a week later, staring at the fog rolling through the pines. Tina brought her a cup of tea. You did it, she said softly. You stopped them. Evelyn smiled faintly. Stopped one. Not all. Tina sat beside her. What now? Evelyn looked out at the road. Now I live. For once, I live without being someone's experiment. Caleb appeared in the doorway, still recovering. I contacted the authorities. I told them everything I knew. I'll testify. Evelyn met his gaze for the first time without hate. Good, maybe that's how you start making it right. He nodded, voice breaking. Can you ever forgive me? She took a long breath. Not yet. Maybe never. But I can try to forget you in peace. He looked down. Then that's more than I deserve. Weeks later, Evelyn stood at a small memorial garden behind the hospital's ruins. The facility had been shut down, stripped bare, only silence remained. She laid a single white flower on the cracked steps. For all of us who were forgotten, she whispered. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. They didn't all die. Evelyn. There are more labs. More trials. Her pulse quickened. She typed back, who is this? No reply. The wine carried faint echoes of rain. Evelyn stared at the hospital's dark outline one last time, her reflection flickering in the puddles. Then it isn't over, she murmured. She walked away into the fog, into the unknown, into the next chapter of her life, and somewhere, deep beneath another anonymous building, machines hummed to life again.